Good evening. Welcome to Investigators News, and this is Justice for All. But tonight it's a little different. And when I look for news for justice, I found that debate last week. And then I talked to people over the weekend and my sources, and I called back home. Home is being California. And I was given some few links to take a look at. And I decided tonight I'm just going to expose it all. This is a show to share. And this show is for everyone. Everything that we see going on in our country right now is happening to all of us. And yes, you could be deceived and they can smile at you and lie to your face. Will you believe them? 47% of our country says they would. That's what's wrong. So justice and truth. Now, what I was talking about was the televised debate between the governor and my home state, Gavin Newsom, and the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. And it was set up as a sort of comparison of the two state models of governance. Which is better model which was a better model for other states and our country to follow suit. This administration made sure Newsom was the one to promote this plan for our country. They prepped him for this debate with Nancy Pelosi as his aunt, as well as he met with Biden and Jinping, and to promote both of their plans for this country. The oppression of California is not just a Republican issue, but a plan to oppress all of us. Democrat as well as independents. All of us, folks. Isn't the gas prices hitting all of us? While it's true that Florida has done quite well along in any number of areas, really the comparison could have been made between California and virtually any of the other states in the country. Because when it comes to key metrics of economic performance and quality of life in California, it's the very worst. It's the very worst state in the country. And according to California politicians, and according to Kevin Kiley, a Republican from my hometown, claimed, we have a governor who went on television, in fact, for months, even for years, now been trying to claim that California is in fact leading the nation. He says it's time and time again, and California is the model for our whole nation and a plan for all of us. He said the future plans first in California, and indeed it's true that the current administration here and Washington, D.C. has copied any number of California's policies to use California as a model to promote what California has done. This administration would like the whole country to be just like California. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? And in fact, it has elevated many California officials. Julie Su, the acting Secretary of Labor, held that position for governor, and Newsom, of course, and for governor. And of course, Vice President Kamala Harris and the Secretary of Health, Human Services, Javier Becerra, was formerly California's Attorney General. Who else is involved? Alejandro Mayorkas, Douglas Parker, and the head of OSHA. And this is the matter of a great national concern. It is really to look at all the facts of what happened in California, what governor tried to do at the debate. That was to present a complete alternative reality using false, misleading, in some case, simply delusional assertions. about the true nature of life in California and other states using the same delusional facts to deceive this country is just criminal. So I want to take a moment today to correct some of the misstatements that were made by Gavin Newsom in the debate. First, there was a discussion of California exodus, and the governor refused to acknowledge the fact that people are leaving the state in record numbers. In fact, he asserted that more people are moving to California than to Florida. The reality between 2019 and 2022, 1 million people left California, while only about 30,000 people moved to Florida. So many people have been leaving California, the state that literally run out of U-Hauls. In fact, for 3 straight years, California has led the nation in U-Haul departures. And what is notable about this is the prior Newsom governorship. California has gained population every year since our founding in 1850 until he took over. I've always been the state that people want to come to, where anyone could get ahead. And now the state, see, that's what I thought about California. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. Everybody wanted to go to California. The state so many people can't wait to leave behind now. So it was just completely abrupt change in the trajectory while California continued to grow. And then the governor Newsom took office, and suddenly they are the leading nation of departures. They have the highest out migration rate in this country. In fact, even more shocking, when you look at San Francisco, the city that Newsom was the mayor of the city, represented by Congressman Pelosi. It's is from and these are lead politicians, and not only that, Vice President Kamala Harris, Vice President, is from there, worked there, attorney there. Nancy Pelosi still Congress and responsible for her own city. Politicians in our country uh, wants to make the rest of us San Francisco, and even maybe like the Bay Area, that is on the verge of collapse. And their capital, Sacramento downtown, is a ghost town. Those aren't my words. This is from the editorial page of the San Francisco Chronicle. This is a city where businesses are leaving, fleeing seemingly every day, citing an intolerable conditions and definitely not safe. The city in San Francisco right now is losing residents faster than any major city in the United States history. That's right, San Francisco is losing residents faster even than Detroit. Even when Detroit went bankrupt. So Newsom talking about when he said live on television, there's more Californians or more Floridians going to California and vice versa. Well, reality is that actually it was a very horrible comparison. Over 50,000 more people went to Florida than came to California. And what Newsom did was revealing that the rate of California's per capita moving to Florida is lower than the vice versa. But he did a asymmetrical comparison where he used, per capita numbers when looking at the state, the people departing, but used raw absolute numbers looking at the state that they are going to. So if you do an asymmetrical manner, whichever way you did it, in raw numbers on both sides per capita, both sides of the course of California does much worse after it's all said and done. The state has the highest out migration rate in the country. And since Pelosi accepted MS-13, the crime rate has risen 40%, but the governor's willingness is to go on TV and distort the numbers, um, and use this completely nonsensical trick, or make it per capita on one side, but not the other. Just shows how willing he is to mislead you, both his own and constituents. People throughout our country, a second area where major correction is needed when it comes to handling um, um, the pandemic. Now, here's the reality of California had the most draconian and longest lasting lockdowns in the country. When it came to school shutdowns, business shutdowns, church shuts down, when it came to mass mandates and vaccines. Mandate vaccines of the way of California had the highest level of government coercion and control. And yet the governor gets up the other night in the debate and says, oh no, Florida was the lockdown state. You know, it's truly a boggling to the mind that he would stand up with a smug smile, or he was sitting, I think. He had that smug smile on his face and make the assertion of everything that I'm going to tell you about tonight, and make the assertion. So yes, it's true. Basically, every state, uh, right when the pandemic arrived, everybody took drastic measures, and we didn't know what it was. So those first couple of weeks in February and into March, but the difference is some states learned and others didn't. Some states looked at the evidence and placed trust in their citizens, whereas California never learned and continued a state of emergency until 2023. In fact, if you look at a direct comparison of Newsom, that he claimed Florida shut down schools, and in fact, if you look, the actual facts, Florida ranked third out of the 50 in getting kids back to school. Well, you want to know where California ranked? 50th out of 50 states in getting kids back to school. They had the longest lasting shutdowns in the country, and those harms are going to be with us for a very long time. But actually, a few weeks ago, he had actually admitted to Politico. He said he would have done everything different if it came to the pandemic. He tried to make excuses. We didn't know, we didn't know, we didn't know. But that's not true. It's a matter of fact of hindsight in 2020, because so many other states, in fact, the other states managed to do better in jobs. And here's the truly perverse thing, in despite of everything California did to take away the rights of its citizens, to shut down beaches, to shut down youth sports, to keep kids out of school, many of them not come back. And despite the damage to the young people and to the businesses and the Democrat institutions, in the name of public health, California wound up in an excess of mortality rate exceeding the national average, even though they had the benefit of relatively young population. That's why the Lancet study actually says California had one of the highest standardized pandemic mortality rates in the entire country. And yet Newsom, of course, ignores, and he simply accuses Florida and other states of having tens and thousands of lives die unnecessarily, completely, and the actual facts of the situation, the reality that Newsom's one-man dictator rule in California. And at every turn, the governor prioritized getting themselves in the headlines and rewarding special interests over health and the well-beings of Californians. And this continued for years. And he did not learn. In fact, things got worse. As time went on, even after he set the records for how long he was keeping kids out of school in October of 2021, the governor proudly announced, it was going to be the first state in the nation to impose a student vaccine mandate for the pandemic. It applied to all grade levels, public, private schools alike, with no exceptions, not even the exceptions for religion or personal belief. He was the first governor to announce such a mandate. He boasted how great it was about being the first governor to announce such a mandate. And he wound up being the only governor to announce that mandate because no one else used it. At the beginning of the year, he formally withdrew the mandate without even going into the effect, and even the World Health Organization. Get this. Even the World Health Organization told me, quote, the pandemic vaccines are not needed for healthy kids and teens. And then it came up, and let's talk about the homeless. Newsom claimed that he spent an unprecedented resources of homeless and got 60,000 people off the streets. And now it's partly true from what I've been able to dig up. He did. The second is really preposterous. The first part's true. California spent $2 billion on homeless over the last 5 years, and the problem has only gotten worse. He spent all that money, and it's gotten worse in recent years. Homeless Californians have increased 15 times faster than the rest of the country. They say even almost 20% faster. Unsheltered homeless in the whole country, basically. Now, California, Newsom himself acknowledged that Californians are, quote, wondering where the heck all their tax dollars went. And if you want to do a direct comparison, the federal government has counted over 171,000 homeless in California last year versus about 10 to maybe 15,000 in Florida. Newsom himself even was in Los Angeles recently. And he said it looked like a third world country. And San Francisco, frankly, my dear, is much worse with one exception. A couple weeks ago, when the president of China came to the town where there was the APAC conference, the world leaders in San Francisco basically met up. The New York Times wrote a story talking about the makeover and beautification efforts that were hastily undertaken. The Times article says San Francisco had this week of teenagers frantically cleaning up after a house party with their parents on their way home. The Times continues, perhaps the most obvious change was seen with Nancy Pelosi federal building for over 2 years with people regularly using drugs in an adjacent alley. Most have seemingly disappeared in a poof with the cleanup. Well, nobody knows where they put them now. They haven't been seen since. The Times reported that San Francisco added more than 200 beds in its shelter system just for the arrival of Jinping. And it notes some residents have wondered why San Francisco has been able to fix its notorious problem for a president of China, but never for them when the cries of help was on his doorstep. And what about education? Newsom cried to claim California is outperforming most of the states, even Florida. He cites fourth grade reading And eighth grade math. So they're doing the best in that. So here's the reality number one. California spends a lot more money on than any other states. It spends 45% more per pupil on K through 12 education than Florida does. And what do they get in return? California has the lowest literacy rate in the country. There are 800 schools. 800 schools where 75% of the students do not read at grammar school grade level. California's most recent eighth grade reading scores are the worst in any state in the country. It was measured our fourth grade reading scores are third worst in the country, which is why it's unbelievable, even to me, when Newsom asserted that our eighth grade reading scores are somehow indicative of a good leadership. When they literally have the worst eighth grade reading scores in California history, but basically worse than the country. And in some counties, poor students basically fall by the wayside, or far worse in all of California's education system. 49 California has ranked 49th out of the 50 states for being the worst for students that are poor. And then he wants to say the achievements are he made it great for eligibility for free and reduced school lunches. But guess what? They were cut by him, and not only that, but they cut it 30% under the Obama administration, with Michelle in charge for the school's policies around the country. A no credit rule made some sit and watch others' kids eat because of lost, stolen, or parents usually paid the debt on payday. This ended under the Obama administration by Michelle Obama, and then cut again by policies by Newsom. And the gas prices. He tried to say Californians are being ripped off, and I agree with him on that. California is being ripped off. I've seen the prices. It's ridiculous. He said, whoa, it was ripped off by oil companies. The reality is that California has by far the highest gas prices of any state in the country right now, even surpassing Alaska and Hawaii. Right now, gas prices in California are $158 above the national average. So I think it's $1.58 above the national average, sometimes up to $2. So if the oil companies are ripping them off, why are they ripping us off much more in California than any other state? It would all be the same, right? The reason gas prices are so much higher in California is there's a few reasons, but primary, they have the highest gas tax in the country. They have all kinds of regulations like additives added to the fuel and taxed on these additives. It would cause the tax on the gas to go up. Now, because of these additives, it would shorten the life of a carburetor almost by 50%. Then tried blaming smog, and then they taxed them more for the smog. That added much more to the price of each gallon. So reality is that they're getting ripped off, but they're getting ripped off by their own government and Newsom. And by the way, we do get what they do get in return for this is paying the highest taxes on gas in the country. Money that's supposed to be going to transportation in California generally ranks as having about second or the third worst roads in any state. any state in the country, which people will be sure to tell you if you drive through California for any reasonable stretch of time. The realities of California's highest and deepest potholes, highest taxes for the deepest potholes, even with federal funding for infrastructure. Um, where's that money? So they not only do they get money for their transportation department through your taxes, but then they get federal money for infrastructure. So where's the money? They sacrifice the most. They pay the most in taxes, even for this, and the least in return. The issues of taxes also came up with a Newsom, and he tried to somehow slice and dice the data and says California for certain people has a lower tax burden than Florida does. Really. Reality, this reality is this: California has the highest income tax in the country, the highest gas tax in the country. When you look overall tax, the burden in California, total taxes are 10,000 and one a hundred and a hundred, 1,167 per person in Florida. So it's the taxes are 10,000 a person, and in Florida it's only 1,100. And I'm sorry. Let's try that. Okay, they're over. Let me get this. I hate this tax numbers. All right. How we get it in here is the total taxes are 10,000. Now, one person, it would be 1,167 per person. Now, in Florida, it's about half that, about 546. But Newsom wanted to talk about working class. Well, the reality is the working class in California has the far highest, as the third highest gas prices in the country, thanks to extremely regressive set of taxes. California has the third worst inequality in the country. California has the highest poverty rate in the country. California leads the nation in real poverty rate. And last year, California had the lowest wage growth in the country. It went up less in California for workers in any state and in California, which is why the California exodus. When you think of all the people leaving, it's not just about who they are, who they are, but off they went. And off they went because they wanted to escape very high income tax rates, but actually working people who just cannot afford to get by in the state, working 2 and 3 jobs, or what they call the working homeless that just can't afford the rent. People who just cannot afford to get in or get by in the state and they're not allowed or even unable to pursue a career that they would want. They're unable to buy a home because of skyrocketing home prices, rent prices. That is the reality of life in California under Gavin Newsom. Great plan they got for the country, huh? Newsom, there was also a discussion of economy, both nationally, California and Newsom. He said something very interesting. He said, nation's current unemployment rate is a sign of a booming economy. The unemployment rate is pretty low, national. So that's the link that he drew, is low unemployment rate is good economic stewardship. So for the first response, that is that it's a mirage on national level, giving that the workforce participation rate has gone down significantly. A small business owner will tell you that they're still, to this day, having a very hard time getting workers. So, where does that number come from? Nobody knows. But if we take Newsom at his word, and low unemployment rate is a sign of a good leadership, well, then we can look at California's unemployment rate. And the leadership turns out he has the second highest unemployment rate in the entire country. If you want to do a direct comparison between California and Florida, just pick one example. Since January of 2019, employment has increased over a million. Uh, and of 31,000 in Florida, it's declined by 85,000. And in California, if you ask California themselves, how do you think the economy is doing? 71% of California expect bad times or a severe depression economically over the course of the next 12 months. 71%, that majority of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. That's why I said this is for all. Believe the economy is on the wrong track, is what they said. And it's only going to get worse in California. The governor, just a few months ago, boasting about how California had a surplus. And the last couple years, now that was again a great sign of a positive governance of economic stewardship. Well, you didn't hear him mention the reasons that California has a massive deficit right now, a $31 billion deficit, which is out of step, which was what's happening last year. Now, Florida has a $17 billion surplus, and now it came to immigration uh, and the border. The governor NSA, a truly outlandish claim that Congress and not the president is responsible for the border. Let's take a look at the basic facts from 2014 until the beginning of the Biden administration. We're only 4 months through that whole span of 6+ years, had 100,000 encounters along the southern border. So only 4 months out, all of those months for 6 years, there were more than 100,000 encounters on the border. The Biden administration, there were 29 straight months with more than 100,000 border encounters. So if you asked what changed, one, the administration between the time Biden took office and the time he did take office, from 2014 all the way up to when they wanted the border wall stopped. It was a Congress, the president, and a Democrat Senate and a Democrat House for the first few years of the administration. And the total numbers now is that we had 6.4 million illegal crossings at the southern border. They have also been 1.7 million in this fiscal year. 2021, the administration set a record for illegal border crossings. And now in the year 2022, they broke that record. Now we're even looking at a bigger record being broke this year. This is another area where Newsom's tendency to grasp for some distorted factoid and completely alternate the picture of reality was on display, because when he did his initial interview with Hannity, Newsom said, no, Biden is doing a great job. The border, just look at this month, illegal crossings are down 70%. And there happened to be a blip, I guess, in June. Well, if you didn't hear him, he used that talking point And why is that? Because in subsequent months, the illegal border crossings have been off the charts. And in September of this year, he set all-time record for a single month. I want to read you something that he said. Quote, let me be clear. California is a sanctuary state. That's what he said. Let me be clear. California is a sanctuary state. And we have defied and resisted the Trump administration's policies at every turn, maybe even broke some. He said, we'll do it again and again and again. And then Newsom even signed a law closing ICE detention facilities that overturned the Ninth Circuit, that was overturned by the Ninth Circuit courts. That is unconstitutional. So the evidence is extremely clear. We have a crisis at the southern border, that this administration has refused to take actions that are necessary to address it, and that the Governor Newsom has made the situation worse. And for him to blame Congress or to blame the House, specifically beyond belief, when the House passed the Border Security Act earlier this year, the most robust border security bill that has passed the House in a very long time, maybe ever. Which would make a huge difference in the crisis at the border, which is contributing to the fentanyl crisis, human trafficking, and then introducing potential national security threats to our country. The House of Representatives, we passed a bill that, the House of Representatives passed a bill that happened since it's been gathering dust on Schumer's desk. This bill would basically protect our national security. And if the representatives pass that bill, and this is for California, their house, but no, it's gathering dust on Chuck Schumer's desk. They don't even know if he still has it. And in the Senate as well, passed the time for action on this. It issued the ninth area where the governor completely misled at the debate. And when it came to crime, he said crime is down in California. In fact, the FBI data showed violent crimes in California increased 133%. And this is over the last few years. It has gone down across the countries. Cities have seen an epidemic of retail theft in San Francisco to a string of high-profile businesses. So sometimes it's even beyond the city. Basically, all cited crime problems as a reason. They blame Los Angeles. They say people are moving from Los Angeles to the northern part. It's too crowded. Well, no, Los Angeles police have advised residents not to even go outside. In fact, Los Angeles tells you don't wear jewelry or nothing in public. Don't show your fancy phones. Don't carry your expensive purses. In fact, if you want to do a direct comparison between Florida and California when it comes to crime, there are few figures cited in that debate he had. Very interesting. It's very telling when it comes to motor vehicle thefts. Now, why is this telling? Because California has a lot of crime, but it doesn't even go reported because it won't be prosecuted. Understand that. It won't be prosecuted. They have all those laws that basically legalize retail theft, legalize open air drug use like Prop 47. They have other laws like Prop 57 that have downgraded a lot of offenses. And they have the cities that have defunded the police so bad. And this is so-called progressive prosecutors like George Gascon. who some initially appointed as DA. San Francisco, who refused to prosecute even those crimes for most of the laws that are even on the books that is chargeable. You have a business that will be robbed in broad daylight, and they'll just let the people go in and they won't bother to file a police report because they know nothing's going to happen because the amount of purchases they can take. So there's a smash and grab. As long as everybody stays below $1,000 in merchandise, they can walk out. And there's nothing the business can do. So why report it? You can't actually look at reported crimes as an accurate gauge. Much criminal activity there is. What that it did bring the rate of crimes down to make the state look good. It's why other states are doing this now. So what am I talking about? Well, if you put the price of, if it was $500 and you'd be charged, they moved it to 1,000. Well, when it was going a little bit more, they boosted it up a little bit more. Okay, so what it does is all those people are not going to be charged, and it brings your crime rate down. And every city seems to be doing this. But when it comes to a vehicle thefts, okay, that's different because usually an insurance claim. So they get the realistic, do we get a really realistic, accurate numbers when it comes to motor vehicle theft? How does that compare to the 2022 report with vehicle thefts per capita? It was 250% higher in California than it was in Florida. 250% higher. And that'll be no surprise to anyone that's been to San Francisco. The advice is you should roll down your windows when you leave your car park, so at least they won't have to break the windows to get in them, to steal stuff. Leave it unlocked. Don't leave anything in the car. Nothing. And you sometimes even have to take the rugs. Though there are certainly plenty of others where the governor of the state has gave completely false, misleading characterizations. What life is like in California? Well, issue of personal freedom is what he says. He called California the Freedom State, but um, KO Institute rankings of freedom in 50 states rank California as 48th of the most free state. And Florida ranked just second. What happened in the course during the pandemic lockdown, where California had the highest measure of government control? At least met a measure of personal choice and freedom. They had the least amount of freedom during the pandemic. But it began long before the California ever had the pandemic. And freedoms of its residents, when it comes to economic freedoms, for example, Newsom signed into a law, AB 5, which deprived countless people of their rights to earn a living, effectively abolishing independent contracting. Joe, I think that's what you were talking about. For many professions in California. Now, his former labor secretary, Julie Su, is trying to do the same thing through the regulatory process in DC. Just look at the things like, the bans of all the bans that they're doing. Well, how about straw bans, gas-powered leaf blowers, bans on chopsticks, and others things. Oh boy. So even gas-powered vehicles by 2035 Newsom is away every day in California. They wake up wondering what's going to be banned next. They have no freedoms in that state. It's a delusion of the highest order. California, I believe, was the greatest state in the country. Greatest state in the country, I thought. It's a state where everyone was always wanted to go to. So why are people moving? And rather than attacking police and support law enforcement, why don't we support the law enforcement in the communities? Defunding rather than contributing to a false and misleading negative narrative. The law enforcement have led, we have led the entire nation in going after um, fentanyl dealers and charging them with murder. Uh, so they don't have more of our kids continuing to be victimized. So when Newsom says California is a model for the nation, nothing could be further from the truth. So California failures become national failures. And just within his term as governor, and he's promoting this. He's promoting the shutdowns. He's promoting the less money for education. Oh boy, folks. Um, and as more of these California failures have been put into our laws, um, with these same untruths. It's really weird because I listened to Newsom and I listened to the governor of California of New York, I'm sorry, and a few others, and they're saying the same thing he is. We're doing great. We're doing great. We're better than everyone with the same untruths. And I don't like pointing fingers, but the states that are failing, like California, that are right behind California, I think there's like 25 of them, 25 of 50. Michigan, New Jersey, California, New York, Colorado, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, Wisconsin, Alaska, Iowa, New Hampshire, Louisiana, West Virginia. Half our country that this administration claims that are the best have cloned on to the worst economic in history. This isn't a recession, California people say. It's a depression. And, I'm stating the truth. Our country in the current state under this plan hasn't worked. I'm not putting them down. I'm stating the facts. It's the lack of leadership. And Newsom proudly says uh, there are many cultures in California. And I thought it was weird when I went to San Francisco and there's Chinatown over here and there's Latino town over there and there's Japanese town over here and it was all separated out as segregation. In California, they say, is the system that has the worst offenders. Putting those cultures together in subdivisions away so they can all be together, and the lack of help that they do for most of the people, and the help for the disabled and elderly is at the bottom of the list, the worst in this country. If this is the way you want your country, vote for it. This wasn't the American dream I was told about. The problem is when Newsom got on, like I said at the beginning, this was planned. He wanted to promote The new Democrat plan that would make our country better, make us freer, make us less dependent. And the plan of California, higher taxes, higher gas, higher grocery bills. And we're going to pay the taxes on it. And it will all be great. And when he sat there, if any of you watched it, he sat there with a grin and a smug that I just wanted to slap off his face. And he sat there and lied to all the American people. And why? Because he's smiling, because they are slowly putting it into our system for the rest of the country. Federal laws that will do the same thing. California has always been a model for the rest of the country. Whatever happens in California eventually filters down to the other states within 5 years. He talked how wonderful it was and lied the whole time. Well, misstated, misused the facts. And what he wants is preposterous and evil. And will we see justice out of this? Well, it comes to the vote, folks. California, and with him with this debate, go back and watch it. It only proves what they're fixing to do to the rest of the country. And with Nancy Pelosi as his aunt, and Vice President Kamala Harris was right there in California with Chuck Schumer and the rest. It's all this great plan. They all are in power enough to be able to push what they need to push in Congress and Senate. And as we see independents and Republicans fight for our rights, we see something very chaotic and disorganized. But when I've talked to a few of them in Washington, what they're saying is it may look chaotic and it may be claimed to be chaotic, but what you're seeing is so many things happening at once. So they can try to fix our country before they ruin the country in 2024. I want to thank you all for watching. Share this video, because what they're doing in California, watch out. It's coming to your state. Subscribe and hit that like button, and share. We have William coming up next. I got to go get him on the phone, and we'll be back in about 5-10 minutes. And we'll have William's investigator news and world news. So with that, you guys have a wonderful Monday. And we need to change this country. There needs to be justice. So stick with it. Hang on. We could be in for a bumpy ride. Thank you all for watching.